Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's Napa Perkins from Electra Astrology. This is Astrology for Awakening, where I'm going through all of the sun signs. This particular episode is one that was edited from my 2024 Season 5 podcast, Star Narratives. This is our transition from eccentric, wild, energetic, people-centric Aquarius into the intuitive and confusing, frankly, waters of Pisces. If you're new here, I'm going through all of the zodiac signs. I'm also going through the asteroids because we all have these energies in our chart and in our lives and our own psychology. We are trying to awaken and trying to understand what we're really doing here. What is the nature of what we're doing here? Because what we have been told and the operating system that we have been using for most of our lives is changing. We are in a massive shift. If you're listening to this teaching, you are feeling it and you're probably trying to understand it. The way that I teach astrology is through a spiritual, psychological lens where I'm helping you to see yourself more clearly. This is about developing self-awareness and a conscious state of self. So you're no longer just going through on autopilot, being reactive, being conditioned. This is where you are waking up from your amnesia that we all have to undergo in order to become embodied on this planet. You're waking up from that dreamy state into more awareness, into being able to see what is really going on. And there's a lot. We are wrapping our minds around all sorts of new stuff. We have been for the last several years, but in 2025, it really ramps up. So today we are talking about Aquarius into Pisces. Before we get started though, if you don't have your hands on my free Astrology is a Superpower ebook, you can get that in the link below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can get more of these teachings. I'm releasing a lot of teachings right now. I'm wrapping up with Aquarius, moving into Pisces for the next 4 weeks. I've also been doing an asteroid series. So we're looking at how the asteroids show up for all of us. And it's important to know these archetypes because it helps you to make connections and understand yourself better. So I love it. And based on the feedback that all of you so kindly send me, y'all love it too. So let's talk about this transition. So you've heard me say that the zodiac signs that are right next to one another, there's this merginess that happens. There's this overlap. And although the signs are completely different from one another, Aquarius, which is a fixed air sign, moving into Pisces, which is a mutable water sign. Air is masculine, water is feminine. Fixed wants to stay stuck in the perspective and doing the work. Mutable wants to change perspective, have fluidity. Like these two signs are really different. And that's true of every zodiac sign as you progress through the wheel. They might be next to one another, which means that they are sharing some qualities, but they are so unlike each other. And so as the sun transitions, we are going through this energetic shift within us because the sun acts as that spotlight of consciousness. Whatever sign the sun is in kind of lights up that part of our human experience. In the case of Aquarius, it's been lighting up our relationship to other people, how we get sucked into things like groupthink, how we get indoctrinated into these bigger ideas of what is good, what is virtuous, and then the places where we have to rebel, we have to distance ourselves. And then also that question, as I talked about in the Leo Aquarius episode, of how do I find myself when I'm in a sea of other people? So these are all Aquarius questions that we've been kind of grappling with over the last 4 weeks, or every time the sun is in the sign of Aquarius. So now we are moving into Pisces, which is such an interesting / tricky / confusing archetype to understand. And that's because it's the archetype of God, of higher power, of spirituality. And we just don't understand that very well. Okay. Like we think we do. Sometimes we really have it nailed. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, this is what my religion says, or this is what my spirituality says. This is what I feel in my heart, my intuition. And yes, like those can feel very real and very firm in the moment, but they're always subject to change because Pisces is so totally nebulous. And although it's not unpredictable in the way that Aquarius is, it's not fixed at all. It's the opposite of fixed. I'm going to be releasing a talk on the nodes. The nodes have just recently changed. The North Node is now in Pisces and the South Node is in Virgo. So that's a great talk that's going to be released this week. Check that out. Oh, and I meant to say, if you're listening to this content and you want to dial in and have some one-on-one time with me, you can find me at electroastrology.com. So when we're going from all of this Aquarius work around people, and then we move into the Pisces work around higher power, it can be really disorienting. Something that you'll hear me say a lot when I'm talking about Pisces and the 12th house is that it's the enchanted forest. We never really know what we're going to get, and nothing really makes that much sense. And yet, it's right here with us. It's in all of our charts. We are all in some way connected to spirit because we come from spirit. We will leave to go back into spiritual form. One of the things that I'm noticing in my clients and also just in the field and on a personal level as well is that if we're invested in our evolutionary growth, which I think most of us here anyway are, that it does take this deepening into our spiritual nature. There's a remembering that has to happen. There's a sense of trust and surrender that absolutely has to be undertaken. And trusting and surrendering is really difficult work. So it's not something that you would say to yourself, like, I am trusting now, and then I'm going to be trusting forever. It doesn't really work like that. It's these moments where we come into a state of trust. Okay, I'm surrendering to what is. It is going to be what it will be, and I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to listen to my intuition. I'm going to really trust that the path is going to open up before me, right? Yes, I've made it. And then the next moment, somebody honks at you in traffic, or a door slams and startles your nervous system, or you realize that somebody has drank the last of the coffee creamer and there's none for you, and you find that anger rising, and bam, the trust, the surrender, that state is gone. So we're always building the muscle. We never just fully land in Pisces and stay there forever. We never fully land in that deeper connection with our higher power and stay there forever. It doesn't happen. It's part of being human that we have to come back into our human nature, our disappointments, our desires, our preferences. So we're looking at this transition between Aquarius, where it is so human and so mental. And there's this idea that we can make things happen. I'm a humanitarian. I'm going to make the world better. It's me, and it's my brain, and it's my stuff, and I'm in charge. Okay, which on some level is true. But then we go into Pisces, and it's like, oh, I don't recognize any of this. And I'm actually not as in charge as I thought. And like, wow, there's this whole system that's kind of operating outside of my control, operating outside of my knowledge base. And I think that's something that's interesting to contemplate when it comes to Pisces, Neptune. There's just so much that we can't wrap our brains around, because what is the nature of God? What is the nature of the ethereal realms? We can read all about multi-dimensions and ascension and aliens and fairies and God, Jesus, heaven, hell, deliverance, oneness, universal energy. Like, we can read about it and we can gather what makes the most sense to us, and we can really hold on to that as our belief system. But the truth is, we have no idea. We are not meant to know specifically while we're in human form. That's part of what we've come to Earth to do, is we've come to Earth to find our way back to our spiritual knowledge. But we have to go through these trials and tribulations, which bring up a lot of the darker side of Pisces, which I'm going to be talking about as we progress through these next few weeks, where we get into our fear. And we get into the not knowing and the destabilization that comes from the not knowing. And I think that's a huge part of this major shift that we're seeing, is we all have to face the fact that there's not really a knowing. We don't really know what's going on. We can't really know what's going on. And that's part of the game here. We have to find our center, even when everything feels topsy-turvy and very confusing. And of course, the same tired old story is that We weren't taught that. We weren't conditioned to do that. We were conditioned to be very Virgo, which I go into on my talk about the nodes. And Virgo is where we show up and we put the smile on our face and we do a damn good job. And then we solve the problem. But we all know like that is not the end of the story. So I hope that you'll be joining me for the next several weeks as we go through the archetype of Pisces, which I think is one of the most magical, inspiring, and thought-provoking signs. This is where the wisdom descends. All right, let's jump into the teaching. We are looking to do something fairly specific with this Aquarian archetype. This is an archetype of unconventionality, where we bring our uniqueness to the table. It's where we are quirky, and that's a good thing. This is energy that asks us to improve upon what's already here. When we're just doing the same old Capricorn thing of following the rules and doing what is expected of us and, putting people in power, all of this top-down government, like we've spoken about through Capricorn season, when we're just handing over our power to people, to laws, to groups, to expectations, other people's morals and values, then we lose touch with that quirkiness, that idealism. And that is something with Aquarius that's so important to remember is we need to idealize. We need to think unconventionally. We need to use our intellectual flexibility to make things better. This is where we also look at the qualities of Aquarius. Sometimes we look at Aquarius almost like it's a cold energy, and it can be cold. It is also connected to things like science, artificial intelligence, technology. And in some ways, those things are very cold. There is an assumption that with all of those things that they are somehow better than the human mind. We talked all through 2020 and 2021 about this sentence, trust the science, as if somehow science itself had more innate intelligence than the dynamic human mind. And in some cases, that might be true, but it's certainly not in all cases. So Aquarius is where we begin to compare and contrast science versus spirit, or artificial intelligence versus humanity, with the understanding that neither is better than the other, that everything is here as a part of this whole collective. We can't just trust the science when we have humanity that has feelings, that has nuance. We can't expect that a scientific answer is going to be the end all be all for every single person. Certainly not when we have so many cultures around the world that are so spiritual in nature. Science can be a part of spirit, but most certainly humans that create science are most certainly not creating spirit. So we have to really be able to discern what the difference is. We understand that a lot of technology really helps us in the world. It makes our life easier. It takes a burden off of some of the things that we would have to do otherwise, but we don't want to lose touch with kindness, with the connection with the spirit of humanity. We can't be best friends with a computer in the same way that we can befriend another human. It just doesn't work like that, not yet anyway. So this intellectual flexibility that is required with Aquarius, we want to use that for quote unquote good. If you find yourself going into the place of emotional distance or favoring a scientific study over a human connection, or you're spending more time with artificial intelligence than you are with human intelligence, those can be some red flags for you to watch out for. It can be easy to get lost in the mind, in the overthinking, or in the trusting of the quote unquote science. And at the same time, that can lead to a coldness or an emptiness or a lack of actual real connection. It's like the difference between cuddling yourself up next to a couch pillow, which can feel comforting, or cuddling yourself up next to a human, which is a different kind of comfort. and frankly, one that most of us really thrive from: the human touch, the human connection, being able to look someone in the eye and just understand multiple layers of emotion, experience, thought, simply by looking at a human in their eye. So, just some food for thought, because we are transitioning into Pisces this week. At the end of the week, the sun enters Pisces on the 18th. Pisces brings us into a totally different realm. It is the realm of spirit, where we have come through all of these signs that are so connected to other humans. Libra is where we are in relationship with others. Scorpio is where we have to understand that we're all pretty traumatized walking around. We all have our own psychology. Sagittarius is where we're looking at our own belief systems based on our own experiences and adventures. Capricorn is how we create laws, what our goals are, how to achieve them. And Aquarius is how we operate within a collective. Pisces is a different flavor because this brings us into the realm of the unknown. This is not a human realm. This is a realm of higher power, of the divine, of mysticism, of spirituality. And there's a lot, probably most of what this archetype covers are things that we don't understand very well. So we come out of Aquarius wanting to understand things through the lens of science, technology, through the lens of our relationships, collective, culture, and we come into this wild unknown where we have human relationships and we have our human knowledge, and we start to tap into things that are less easy to control, things that we don't understand, like empathy. Why do I have to feel the same feelings that you're feeling, even if I'm not having your experience? Why do I have to have compassion and feel bad for you and feel sad? Why does my heart have to hurt when I see that you're hurting? And why is there all of this stuff that I can't even begin to comprehend, that can't be proven, that can't be made into law, that doesn't really fit into my human understanding of what is reasonable and what isn't? So this is quite a leap. And we'll be talking about this for all of next month. The question to be asking yourself right now is, what is your relationship to your spirituality? What kind of spiritual practices do you have to ground you? As we have to live in a world filled with people. And a lot of those people we don't really like very much, or we don't understand, or we don't want to spend time around them. And I think that's just the truth. As much as we all want to see ourselves as humanitarian and benevolent and all of this stuff, the truth is that most places that you end up spending time, the grocery store, the gas station, the hospital, and the school system, your job, we are surrounded by people that we wouldn't choose to be with if we had a choice. So we're having to do that. We're also having to contend with all of our personal stuff. And those are all the signs, Aries through Virgo, which we are headed into, by the way. So we'll be covering those in the next few months. But it's a lot. The soup is a very spicy soup. We eventually hit places where we don't know how to deal. And we are experiencing anxiety or frustration or a numbness, and we don't know what to do. And it is in the archetype of Pisces, of Neptune, of the 12th house, all three of those go together, that we find those answers. But it is through the lens of spirit, through the lens of being able to tap in and do things like trust and surrender and understand our energy, other people's energy. So it can feel very confusing. It's certainly not anything that any of us are taught in school. It is still very poo-pooed by mainstream. Many who were raised with religious backgrounds were taught that this is dangerous. I can't tell you how many people I have spoken to that have asked me about their fears about something like astrology, for example, and how they had been taught in their more mainstream religion or their fundamental religion in childhood that these kinds of things were evil. And so there's a lot of conditioning. There's a lot of unspoken stuff that comes up as we're talking about this particular archetype because it's not religion. That's Sagittarius, and Sagittarius are the man-made philosophies, the man-made belief systems and morals. This is the spirit, which is hard to control. We can't really control energy. We can't really control how these multiple divine layers come to us, the signs, the synchronicities, the invisible realms. We can't control that. We can't really explain it. It's hard to know if they're actually true, but I think any of us, if you really sat down and thought about times in your life where the unexplainable happened, or you were saved by some sort of connection to something that was greater than you, a sign, a synchronicity, you got some sort of message that showed up to you at a time when you really needed it, and you knew in your heart, this is that loved one that passed over. This is them coming to me to support me. Or this animal is speaking to me. I can feel it. Or the sheer pleasure that can flow into your body when you are in the right spot out in nature with the sun on your skin. You know, there is a magic that we all are able to tap into. I think Pisces is the hardest archetype to understand and to work with. So over the next few weeks, I'll be going into that. But what I would like to leave you with is just a simple exercise. Closing your eyes, just being right here in your body, taking a few deep breaths, and just feel the flow of energy through your body as you are breathing and giving your attention to your breath. And just imagine a moment of surrender, of relaxation, right where you are. Nothing to do, nothing to think about, no problems to solve. It's just you in this very present moment. And it's you connecting in with your body, with your spirit, with your soul. And you can even ask your higher self if there's anything that he or she would like to express to you. And know that we are moving into a month where connection with higher self becomes really important. So I will say this throughout the next few weeks. When I talk about higher self, when I talk about the divine, I really mean that in whatever way feels the most comfortable for you and your upbringing. For some people, that's God. For others, it's true nature or the universe, the divine, goddess, higher self. It doesn't really matter in the way that I teach it. It essentially just reminds you that you are connected to something that is greater than your human mind. The human mind is really limited. When we are too human, we have lost touch with our divine connection. This is a time to just begin tapping into your divine connection, whatever that is. And the starting place in my work starts with the breath, paying attention to how your breath impacts your body, mind, spirit. All right, I hope you guys have a great week.